If you ever dreamed of pitching your own animated show, this is the interview you need to hear. Emily Brundige is an animation creator, writer, voice actress, and executive producer. You might recognize her as the voice of Sarah in Over the Garden Wall.
Thanks, Jimmy.
But Emily didn't start her career at a big studio. She began with a YouTube series called Pubertina, a show that got love but also got a lot of hate. I mean, she even got threats from internet trolls. And yet, Pubertina got noticed. That one weird little show launched her career.
I wear that initial hate as a badge of honor. Because of the series, I was invited to pitch shows.
Soon, Emily was pitching original series and landed her first staff writing job at Disney on Star vs. the Forces of Evil. From there, she just kept going, writing for shows like Hilda, Big Nate, and finally creating her own show for Apple TV+, GOLDIE.
It's not just seeing if there's something already out there, but it's seeing how your show fits in the social, political, cultural landscape.
She's Emmy nominated and Annie nominated. She's sold 8 original shows, and now she's written an amazing book, a guide to developing animated shows, a practical, honest, and hilarious guide where she shares everything she's learned from pitching, selling, and writing for animation. It's the kind of advice that she wishes that she had when she was starting out.
I would say one thing to keep in mind is your show is only as believable as you make it out to be.
So, how do you go from YouTube to running your own show? What makes a pitch actually land? And how do you stay true to your voice in a world of executive notes and ever-changing trends? This is the kind of advice you don't get in film school, so let's get into it. So welcome, Emily, to Write for Animation. I'm so happy to have you here as a guest. How's your day going?
It's going pretty well. Thanks, Pietro. I'm happy to talk to you about all things writing for animation.
Awesome. So many people in our audience, they already know you. They're probably why they clicked on the video. But let's start with a brief introduction and also tell us a little bit about maybe things that people don't know about you and a little bit about your experience and animation journey so far.
I got my start in animation making YouTube series, animated series called Pubertina for a channel called Shut Up Cartoons. This was the very early YouTube. So it might have been the first animation channel or one of the first like it. My series Pubertina created a lot of buzz. You know, I got a lot of hate initially from probably 10-year-old boys on the internet, but at the time it was all anonymous, so I didn't know who was.
What kind of hate? What would you pick on?
Oh, like anything from "you're an ugly piece of shit" to like someone give me Emily's address so I can come and snipe her.
Okay, really bad.
I'm laughing because it's so
even
ridiculous.
Beyond trolls and
yeah. I think people were more brave to say things like that because they didn't have to give their names. It actually all paid off. So I wear that initial internet hate as a badge of honor. Because of the series, I was invited to pitch shows around town. And that's when I started selling original shows. And I also, at the same time, was looking to get into writing for animation. And I got staffed on my first show, which was Star versus the Forces of Evil at Disney. I kept writing, but almost every year I had some kind of show in development that I was developing. I've sold 8 original shows through
impressive.
my decade-long career, which is pretty good. And most recently, I was head writer on a show called Hilda for Netflix. And I was head writer on another show called Big Nate, based on the comics for Paramount Plus. And then very recently, I created an original show for Apple TV Plus called GOLDIE, which premiered on February 14th on the platform. And it's about a giant girl with a giant heart. It's a really special show. I'm really proud of it. And now I'm trying to kind of see what's next. And in the past year, I began writing a book called A Guide to Developing Animated Shows, wherein I just put all my knowledge about development, because, a lot of aspiring writers and creators will reach out to me, via LinkedIn or otherwise, asking to meet up or can we have a Zoom? And it's just impossible for me to do that. So I thought this was a way where I could put all that information in one place for people in a very user-friendly way and also be compensated for my knowledge and expertise. So, yeah.
It is amazing. I've been in the past days since you were kind enough to share a review copy in production crunch with a series we are working on and a short film, but I was eager to come back and read a little more. I still have to finish the book. It's absolutely amazing, and it's very generous because you said, of course, it's going to be a way also for compensation and all that, but it's really, you get an entire education for a fraction of the cost of 10 years of experience. It's amazing. And that's kind of what I would love to bring the conversation towards, practical things that you teach in the book coming from your experience, because what I've noticed a lot is that new writers and creators, they have these series ideas. They're so big and so close to their heart. They really love what they're creating, and it's basically the dream of many people to see them on the screen. At the same time, sometimes I notice that they are kind of trying to run before they can walk. And so I advise them to maybe start with a short film, put it out there, maybe do a pilot and things like that. And I'm super interested because you created something that it seems to be, you were like years and years ahead with the YouTube thing, where now you see shows being picked up from YouTube. It's more common and it's way easier for people to put something out there. So I think it's perfect timing, and you were able to do this before. So what would you say as the first step for someone who has that idea, or that they feel like they're called to create something and put it out there?
I would say, well, there are two ways to look at it. There's the way of just putting stuff out there as much as possible, any creative instinct you have, putting it out there. And that's one way to go about it. But if you want your work to really stand out as something thoughtful, I would go through the whole process of developing your idea so that you know how it stands against the landscape of what's out there, and kind of make sure you check all the boxes, that it's something you really feel passionate about, and also not just feel passionate about, but are able to articulate why it's important to you. And then understanding your characters, the world, the story engine, all of those things through and through before you take it out to other people. But I think your advice of making a short first is really good. And that's exactly what I say. It's just unrealistic. People aren't going to come to you for your $1 zillion animated show idea. You need to first put your work out there. So that's a viable way to do it.
Yeah, sometimes I see it as, if I think about even myself and would entrust myself with millions of dollars with a business, it's like, wait, I don't have experience creating a multi-million-dollar business. Mainstream television, you're talking about budgets there, even the lowest budget, you're talking at least hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that helps people putting things in perspective. That said, the passion and the drive, which I think it's very good, the artistic drive of saying, yeah, I know the odds are very much against me, but I still want to, try this and create it. So let's say maybe they created a short film, they experimented with a teaser or something like that. What I loved about the beginning of the book is that you focus a lot on the importance of having something personal and something to say. Can you tell us a little bit about why that is so important?
First of all, it's important for you, for the creator, because theoretically, say your show does get made and you spent 2 or 3 years making it. If it's something you don't feel passionate about, those are going to be a painful 2 or 3 years. If it's not something that really holds your interest, that's going to be kind of a challenge. to communicate your vision, and if you yourself don't really understand where it's all coming from. I've had instances where maybe I've gotten a show in development and not really knowing what to do with it because it wasn't totally resonating with me. So I'd say my more successful projects have been shows that I was truly fiery, passionate about, really understood why I wanted to make them happen.
I've heard someone saying in the industry that was the worst mistake, and thinking about, I need to pay the bills, I need to, go ahead. And so it's much better to be in a creative space and then regretting it and saying, I would have gotten an external job and do something not related instead of, accepting something like that. It was a little extreme, but I thought it was...
I don't quite feel that way. I enjoy doing jobs that maybe aren't the most personal to me, but I'm getting paid and they can still be a lot of fun. The other reason I think you need to know the why you want to make a show is if you're going to be presenting it or pitching it, communicating your idea, let's just say, to other people, it's going to resonate a lot more if it's honest and it's coming from an honest place.
If we think about step by step, that is very important. Something that resonates with you, that can give you that drive and energy that you're going to need for years. What is the next step? We'd love to go step by step to help someone with an idea to understand exactly what's in front of them and what are the small steps they can take to get to the next level.
The next step, and this is a little bit controversial because you can't predict what shows are gonna be made, but I would say the next step is to see how your show aligns with what's already out there. And if there's something really similar, it might not be a good idea to do it unless your vision and execution is entirely different.
I've heard different opinions, like people saying that a show takes years to be made, and so don't worry too much about what's out there.
Yeah.
But I also understand the importance of not wasting so much time with there's already something too similar.
Well, here's an example. Do you remember the movie Book of Life?
Yes,
Jorge
absolutely.
Gutierrez.
Yeah, Jorge, a good friend.
that movie came out and I saw it and loved it. And then Coco was announced and came out, and people were confused because they were so similar, but they were so different. Tonally and artistically, they were still their own thing, even though they both exist. So that's an example, I think, of when two ideas kind of came out at the same time. Two movies that had a similar concept, but were executed really differently and stood on their own.
And in that case, it was also something that was probably in development at the same time. So it was not something that they could have taken at any decision.
Yeah, people don't do it on purpose because it takes so long. Like you said, no one can snap their fingers and copy a feature film that's coming out.
Something that has happened to me is that I am working on something and I see a trailer and I immediately freak out and think, oh, that's so close to that. And then usually when I distance myself a little bit, I understand it's just a trailer. You don't know all the details. And most of the times it was not the case. It was something so different. And so I think that it's a balance of trying to continue and make it in your own. How would you proceed with that?
I think that it kind of goes further than that, Pietro. It's not just seeing if there's something already out there, but it's seeing how your show fits in the social, political, cultural landscape. For example, you want your show to feel fresh, like it's saying something that it's relevant to what's going on in the world. That's important. I think that just shows that you're in touch. It's nice too if you can find an area that hasn't been explored that you think is worth being explored. But yeah, so those are things you can do just kind of as a litmus test to make sure your idea will stand out. And it also goes with making sure you have something to say a reason for doing it, if you can also say why you think it's important now, why now to do it.
Yeah, I think that that's something that with TV you can see when there's an exact combination of these shows came at the right time where the audience was ready. Can you give us an example from your shows where you felt like something really resonated with the current situation or discourse?
It's complicated because there's also the factor of marketing and whether people know your show exists. So I felt that when my show GOLDIE was released, that it was being released at the perfect time because it was kind of the antithesis to a lot of the kind of attitude of what's happening, especially in America. But just, it's this show about acceptance and diversity and being able to feel your feelings and show your emotions. So I thought that it would be a good relief for people to jump into a town. Like, it's kind of an idyllic town where the mayor cares about his citizens and is friendly with them. And I thought that it would be a perfect escape for what's going on right now. Mm-hmm. And that was just happenstance. But you can look at, I talk about different examples in my book, like Bluey and Rick and Morty, and I kind of analyze why they exploded when they did.
How do you find the balance, especially for newcomers, not to be preachy, not to convert your ideas, which are super important to be on the show, but finding that balance of refraining from feeling like it's a statement?
It's almost just about what your intentions are for the show. And your intentions don't have to be clearly communicated in a preachy way on your show, in your writing necessarily. It's just a perspective, and it can be much more subtle than that. It shapes show and your writing rather than ending up as like big speech bombs or something.
Yes. So we got into a point where it sounds to me that it's really important to validate your idea, to know personally, but also in current market of other series that are there. It's original, that it's something new, and also in the current situation. What would be the next step?
So if you've checked those boxes, then it's time to think about who your show is for. Unfortunately, especially if you're pitching your show, you kind of have to put it in a box of demographic, who your show's intended for. The main ones are preschool, 6 to 11, and adult animation. But then there's also co-viewing, like shows that the whole family can watch together, and Y7, which is teen. But just figuring out who you're making your show for, because if it's a show you want people to watch, you should consider that.
Would you put Bluey in that category of co-watching? Because I love watching it with my daughters.
Yeah, I would. Co-viewing. I mean, you could also put it in preschool, but I think it's landed in a more co-viewing space. Yeah.
What would be the differences? I hear 4 quadrants being more for televisions, the entire family watching the film, even with the grandpa, the parents, and the kids. Is that kind of how you think about it?
About Bluey? No, I think it's more parents and children and siblings. I think more of a family show would be something like The Simpsons or Bob's Burgers, that's a little older, so it can also bring in, like, really engage everyone.
I've seen many people asking or being very confused about who their show is. Do you think that's a symptom of something else? How would you approach the
target?
Even I don't know if this is adult, if it's I should even in the creation phase to skew I know Bluey, for example, started, if I recall correctly, that it started a little with a different audience in mind, and then evolved.
Yeah, he was pitching it as an adult show, and everyone told him it was a kid's show. So sometimes you don't know, but I think that it's helpful if you can, for the audience you're pitching to be able to understand that off the back and not have to try to figure that out with you. especially if you're not, experienced showrunner. I think it's just about what you want to do. Do you enjoy writing in a more adult style, adult humor? Is your dream to make a kids show that kids of different ages can enjoy? I think rather than seeing like what your show wants to be, you need to also keep in mind what you want it to be.
Right, which goes back to that energy that you're gonna need for multiple years.
The other things you need to consider, just the basic ingredients, is episode length and tone. So episode length is literally how long the episodes are.
Speaking about the length, I've noticed as a viewer and part of the audience, but also in the conversations, that years ago, it was very boxy. It was like you have the 11 minute, the 22 minutes. Have you noticed a change in that? Would you still recommend fitting your show, at least in the pitching phase, to one of those templates? And what are the different timings that one should include in their, let's say, their pitch deck?
Yeah, I mean, I would if you're pitching to a studio, because they'll inevitably ask you, what's your vision? You see them as 11-minute stories or half hour, 7-minute, especially if it's a preschool show.
Yeah.
Those are the main, and hour long, which is a hard sell because animation is very expensive.
Yeah, it's very expensive. Those translate to 22 minutes and 42 minutes as it used to
Well,
be?
not really anymore because of streaming.
Exactly,
So I find that 22, it can be a 22, a 26, a 30, a 32. Kind of, there's like a range depending on the budget.
So you still pitch it as it's a 30-minute show, and then, the details will
Yeah, because I think 30 minutes just is a different structure than 11 minutes. Even if it's not exactly 30 minutes, the kind of story you need to fill that kind of time is different from an 11-minute story.
On the book, I observed that it's very important for you to summarize in a logline what your show is.
Yeah.
Also thinking about the wide audience, that some of them, they don't even know exactly the term. If you can explain what a logline is, and how, if you have any tips on how to capture the entirety of the show in a few words.
Yeah, so I think of the logline as the quickest way to communicate what your show is. It's usually what you want to get across right away to someone, so that they just have context for what you're going to be talking about. To write a good log line is, we want to be able to communicate a few basic things. Like if it's a character-driven show, you want to communicate which characters we're following, what the conflict is, and also make sure you include what the hook of your show is in that log line, which means what is the thing about your show that grabs people. Sometimes it's a twist on a trope or a surprising combination of elements. I think that those are the three things that you basically want to accomplish. And then if it's more of a plot-driven show, like Severance or something, like where the plot kind of overrides because it's so complex and high concept. So then I would focus on trying to communicate that concept.
Yeah, absolutely. So if it's a high concept show, even though as a writer you do want to instill a character-driven purpose, like Severance is very, you really connect with the characters, but you still package it as, you sell it as this big high concept idea.
Yeah, because that's the hook of it. That's the thing that's most intriguing, is what if you could separate your work life from your personal life?
We have, an idea. We have a log line. Would you start with the log line right away? At what times can we start writing and also building something to present to others? And how does that look like?
I structure my book so that the steps of pitch deck or a pitch Bible, but you don't necessarily have to start with one step or another step. It can be more of a organic process. So maybe you're still figuring out your show concept when you start developing your characters, and maybe it only comes together when you come up with the title and then you think, oh, that's what the show's about. So it can happen any way it happens.
I love that you structured it as a pitch deck, because that's a very common question and something that many people struggle with. It's very hard to find pitch decks. Everybody brings up the same 2-3 that are available online, and that sometimes they don't reflect what is nowadays being used. So I love the fact that someone can get the book and go through step by step and have a complete presentation that is it's proven to be the format that at least they will look at and they're accept, because they can see that it has been done professionally. So that is I think it's something great. What are some other, thinking about the steps, even if they're not in order, what are some elements that you cannot move forward if you don't really think through, or what are some common mistakes you've seen people making?
I think you have to have an interesting main characters. And I think that's one thing people forget sometimes. If you have a character who's kind of passive, who's a boy, he's a really heroic kid, he has a big imagination, like
generic stuff.
Yeah, generic. The more specific you can be with your characters, I think the better. So really take the time to think, like, why would I want to follow this character?
I've heard an exercise that was something that the Domichi from Pixar shared, that an exercise they do is you put the character into an elevator, you stack them there. They need to be super interesting, even if there's no plot beyond being stuck in an elevator, things like that. Is there anything else that comes to mind for you to play with the characters until you find something that is makes them really endearing and unique and interesting and intriguing?
Yeah, I think putting them in different situations is good. On a desert island, there are many situations, and I have a section on interviewing your character.
Love that.
So you can use some of those questions as examples, and you can even tailor the questions more to your show. Also, just like journaling as them, coming up with dialogue can be helpful. Another thing that can be helpful is kind of casting your characters. Like with celebrities or people in your life, just to kind of help inform their character.
And I know you've been also, giving the voice to some of your characters or in other shows as well. Is it something that was helpful for you? I know many of us are introverted, and as writers, it's a little hard to start acting. And would you recommend exploring those elements of acting and improv and things like that as writers?
I mean, it's all good. Like, I myself wouldn't want to do an improv class. Yeah, I think I'm too aware of what's happening.
What's going on? Okay.
Yeah. I think it's especially helpful for people who are shy and kind of need to be pushed out of their shell, for sure. I think it's helped a lot of people. Other ways that you can kind of push yourself, if you're introverted, is giving a taste of what the show you're developing is to friends, to other people, kind of testing your elevator pitch and your ability to quickly communicate your project in an interesting way without being too verbose and going on and on.
I know that there's a lot to explore about pitching as well in what you've written. And that is something that many people we struggle with that. It could be personality, it could be the fact that you don't know exactly how to approach it and who to pitch to. Can you give us general advice on pitching? I know it's a broad subject, but having sold multiple shows, so you must know a lot about it.
I would say one thing to keep in mind is your show is only as believable as you make it out to be when you're pitching it. So, for example, some advice I got from a friend a long time ago when I was starting out pitching shows was, when you're pitching, to think of your characters like they already exist on TV. Talk about your character as if it's Bart Simpson and it's that familiar and that alive of a character. basically any tactics you find to make your show come alive to audience. It's also about the way you present it. If it's a comedy, is your pitch making you laugh because you think it's funny? Like things like that. Sometimes I say fake it till you make it, because I think that really can be helpful, especially if you're not naturally very outgoing, confident person. Be the TED Talk version of yourself, and hopefully eventually it'll become a part of who you actually are as you get practice, or not, or you just always have to morph into a more outgoing person. But it's not very effective if you're too quiet and muttering to yourself. Your passion has to come through.
I do think as a recovering introvert or whatever, it's the fact that the more you do it, the more you start embracing that. A lot of it, for me, was too aware of what people might think of me. It's basically that. And I'm still, struggling. When my producer, when we film the videos for YouTube, it's like, smile, Pietro, you have to smile. Sometimes I'm like that. And so I can totally understand that. And rehearsing out loud and things like that.
That can be really helpful. I mean, there's no better way to prepare than to actually prepare,
Exactly.
And practice your pitch on friends. I've done that before. Like, I had a friend who was pitching a show at the same time I was pitching my show, and we practiced on each other. This is unlikely, but both of our shows got greenlit.
Oh, that's cool.
That's fun to look back on that.
Every now and then we have a membership, like a community, the Write for Animation Academy. We do pitch fests, and it's like elevator pitch. You go. And I always encourage first myself and others. This is the moment to do the bad version, to really go, and make a fool of yourself, because you learn once that is out of the way, that fear, then it's much easier. And I think it's great. And I've been around every now and then with Jorge Gutierrez. I love how he tells a story, and I've heard him applying those elements even to anecdotes and things when you start listening to how he tells a story over and over, and how he says that I have the 5-minute version, the 10-minute version, the elevator pitch of even anecdotes in my life. I thought it was a very cool idea. When people ask you, how did you meet your significant other, or how did you get to move to another country, and things like that, and they become ways you can practice and still being honest. I thought it was a good advice.
Hey, Little Pietro here. Before we jump back in, I want to quickly tell you about the Write for Animation Academy, because pitch fests are just one of the amazing things happening there. This is a creative community where you'll connect with other passionate storytellers who are all about improving their craft. We host daily writing sessions to help you stay consistent, weekly feedback sessions to improve your work, and monthly masterclasses to deepen your knowledge. When you join, you get instant access to our short film writing course. This is a step-by-step program that will guide you through writing your own short film script in just 4 weeks. If you're ready to grow as a writer and surround yourself with people who really get what you're trying to do, join us today at writeforanimation.com/academy. The link is down below. Now, let's get back to Emily.
Okay, so I've heard that to write for TV, you actually have to write, which is something that sometimes it's the things that people, they come up with an idea, but sometimes, and I would say most of the time, they don't have writing formation, they don't come from screenwriting, and they're suddenly so excited about everything else, but then you get to structuring the plot. How can they start, and how can they avoid all the fluff that's out there and start getting on a journey that will allow them to learn the craft and be able to maybe collaborate with other writers, but be able to start by themselves?
I have a few tips in my book. One is forming a writing group with friends who also want to start writing and give each other feedback. It also helps to hold each other to deadline, every week or every few weeks. And that can be really helpful, both to keep you productive and get some outside perspective. But also, there are so many screenwriting courses now available online. And I mean, really, you could skip film school and just take a series of classes. So I would highly recommend taking one of those classes, taking a few of them, and that will automatically get you started if you actually do your homework. But then another thing is looking at shows you like and paying attention to the structure. Like I used to do this. I used to watch like Pixar movies and break down every act and what happened in a journal. With shows, study what the common structure seems to be. There are also some helpful books some are more helpful than others. One I like is Elephant Bucks. It's nice because it's mostly about sitcom, like classic sitcom structure. So they have an example of, I think it's like the Cheers pilot, one of those old classic. So there were certain pauses in sitcom where you would basically just have to find creative ways to deal with those breaks. Yeah. But now you don't really have to worry about that. It's the universality of storytelling that is typically a 3-act structure, but you can break it up however you want, but basically it has to have a beginning, middle, and end, right?
Absolutely. I remember I was at Annecy and I got to meet Joe Bram from Bluey. I know he recommends your book. It was super interesting to ask him about how they structure the show, because you look at it and you see all these different episodes, and his answer was, so interesting. He said, well, we see them as 52 short films. That's it. That we don't really have, okay, that's simpler than, because sometimes you get into books and it's like 7 acts, this or that, commercial breaks, and to get into the core of that is super important. If there's anything else that you wanted to add, something or an example that you want to bring out, and then I know that you developed something with crowdfunding as well.
Yeah, so my newest project is called Strawberry Vampire. It's a project that I would like to see as a show, but for now I'm just kind of trying to make it come to life in any way I can. So I started a Kickstarter to fund a pilot animatic, because I thought that trying to fund a fully animated pilot would just be too hard. And so I thought animatics are a way to communicate almost everything about a pilot or a film. So I decided to do that, and this project is a really personal project because it's the closest to me. It's inspired by my Jewish-Hungarian immigrant family coming to America, and it really dives into their experience being different, kind of the question of how much you assimilate or hold on to your culture that you came from. And it followed a 12, 13-year-old girl named Franny, who's in middle school, and the challenges she faces. And it has a lot of fun characters in it. I'm working with the same art director who art directed my GOLDIE short. His name's German Orozco. He and his wife actually did the character designs. I'm going to be working with Mercury in Canada to animate one scene. It kind of came from my being frustrated having finished GOLDIE and realizing that for me to be fulfilled, I really need to be working on something personal. I also didn't have a lot of savings, so I was like, well, I haven't done this before, so I think I can do this. I think I can start a Kickstarter for this.
I love the Kickstarter video, and you can see there everything we talked about in action. It's awesome because it's you bring out an example of what you can do. You cannot produce an entire pilot, but you can create an animatic. Someone maybe in the audience, they cannot even create an entire animatic, but maybe they can do a teaser in animatic form and put it out there on YouTube. So it's great to see how nowadays we can put ourselves out there. For me, this has been wonderful, Emily. I would love to maybe in the future have you back for a part 2 because it's super interesting. I cannot wait to finish production and dig into the book and learn that as well and share with our community. we'll bring people to the book, we'll bring people to the Kickstarter. Is there anything else they should be looking for?
Follow me on Instagram. You can check out my book and buy my book at my website, www.emilybrundige.com. And you can also sign up for updates on all my projects.
Thank you again, Emily. And it's been a pleasure. One of my favorite interviews. I loved how practical this became, and it's going to help a lot of people. So I'll share some comments with you, because sometimes you see how people start doing things because of an inspiring interview like this one. So thank you again. Have a great
thank you.
Creative
Thanks,
day.
Pietro. Thanks for making this happen.
If Emily taught us anything, is that starting small is okay, and consistency is the key to success. I mean, look at Denver Jackson, an animator who created an entire series completely on his own. And I really mean alone, writing, animating, directing, everything. Watch this video next to find out how he pulled it off. I'm Pietro, and this is Write for Animation, and I'll see you there.